This is an independent audiobook production by C.B. Michaels. In 1875, Colorado, a quiet town stands on the edge of change. A new romance begins to bloom amid the hum of the mill and the whisper of the meadow. But as greed and power stir against its people, a single act of violence shatters the peace. And nothing in Silver Meadows will ever be the same. This is Silver Meadows, Part 1. Part 1. The Meadow and the Baker Boy. The mule had more sense than most men, Rose Thompson thought. Tom walked steadily along the creek road with the sort of patience a body earned from years of hauling, ears turning to the flies like shutters to the wind. Rose liked him for that, liked that Tom didn't hurry her thinking. Donatello carried her, the gelding's black mane snagging bits of sunlight as it flowed in the wind. "Come on, Don. Tom, we better head back toward home. Mama be in fits soon," she said to her animals. Morning lay quiet over the meadow. The mill wheel behind the house turned without argument, boards creaking as if old bones remembered how to bend. Flour dust still floated in the kitchen window. When Rose breathed, she tasted grain on the back of her tongue. It was the taste of making do. It was the taste of staying put. Silver Meadows sat 5 miles west, a smudge of roofs beneath the shoulder of the mountain. She had never ridden past it. On Sundays she and Mama took the wagon as far as the church hill, and on other days they hauled flour into town, bartered what they could, and came on home again. The world, as she'd been told, was wide, but it could also be fenced by chores, and fences were stout things when 2 women were alone. Ann Thompson, her mother, had already stacked the week's sacks by the door, scolded the stove for smoking, and tied back her graying auburn hair with a gingham strip of cloth. "If you're set on dawdlin', dawdle after we're paid," she said, wry as ever. "The sheriff doesn't wait on dreamers, and neither does the baker." "Yes, ma'am." Rose smiled despite herself. She cinched the grain sacks tighter with a double half-hitch, checked the mule's breast collar, and touched Don's neck like a promise. "We'll be back before noon." Anne stood with her hands on her hips, squinting into the light as if it might reveal tomorrow. "If the good Lord had wished me a son, he'd have sent one. He sent you instead. I reckon that's better." Rose laughed softly. "You only say that when you want something heavy lifted." "Then it's fortunate I want coin lifted from Mr. Baker." Anne passed her a folded paper. "From your father." "The money order arrived with Aggie at the post 2 days past. Cash it at the bank, though I don't like that man keeping it, and bring it straight home." The name, Edward Thompson, tightened something at the back of Rose's throat. She tucked the paper into her bodice and nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She clicked her tongue, and Tom pulled the wagon into motion. Donatello paced alongside, hooves muffled in the dust of the creek road. Aspen leaves whispered like gossip above the trail. Rose watched the mountain cut the blue into slices and told herself she didn't mind the fence posts of her days. Then she looked at the long road to town and thought about the world a little. She talked low to Don as they went. "I won't really go," she murmured. "But if I did, I'd take you. We'd see Denver, maybe even back east. I'd like to hear what oceans sound like, Don. Do you think they're loud?" Don flicked an ear. Tom snorted, the sort of answer a mule gives the world, and they carried on toward Silver Meadows. Main Street lifted out of grass and dust like a timber spine. The Silver Spur kept its doors flung wide though the day was young. The liveries sign creaked on a one-eyed nail, and the general store's porch already held 2 men correcting each other about weather. Martha Cartwright's lace curtains fluttered like butterflies. Over everything, the church bell gave one dignified note, just to remind folks it was there. Rose eased the wagon in by the bakery. Heat breathed from the brick oven, and the air smelled of yeast and molasses. The smell wrapped around her and made her feel 11 again, the year her father had brought home a sugared loaf and said, "We'll be fine, Rosie. We just need time." Time had come and gone and did what it pleased. William Baker came out with flour on his beard and temper in his eyes. "You're late," he announced, which wasn't true. Rose tipped her hat politely. "Morning to you, Mr. Baker." The road's soft by the bend where the beavers took the bank. Beavers. He made the word a complaint. "Well, don't sit with it. Inside with the sacks. And where's that son of mine?" "Benjamin," he called, voice already roughened by the day. "Benjamin!" The name did a foolish thing to Rose's stomach. She pretended to be very interested in lowering the first sack, though she could have hefted it blind. Benjamin came from the back room with his sleeves rolled and the scar at his cheek pale against sun-browned skin. He didn't look at her first. He looked at the weight of things, as if to see how best to carry them. Then his eyes flicked up and caught hers, quick like a skittish colt meeting a hand. "Morning," he said softly. His voice always surprised her. For a man built broad in the shoulders, he spoke so softly. "Morning," Rose answered, and wished her heart would be more sensible and not fall out of her chest. They both bent to the second sack at once. Her hands met his at the coarse mouth of it. For a breath, the whole world was burlap and heat, and the ridiculous notion that something could break for touching too long. The sack slipped. Flour leapt like snowfall. It dusted his vest and her hair and even William's boots. Benjamin's mouth opened in a shape that might have been horror or laughter and decided on laughter after all. William did not laugh. "You two saving some to paint the town?" he barked, but he was already turning away to shout at the oven boy. Benjamin brushed flour from her shoulder with the back of his knuckles, nearly not touching at all. "Sorry," he said, smiling. She thought the scar on his face told a story. To Rose it looked like a map line marking the way a boy had become a man. "It's only flour," she said, and because courage sometimes arrived on the breath of disaster, she added, "I brought a money order from the post. I've to cash it at the bank." His smile faded. "Atkinson." He said the banker's name like a pebble that didn't sit right in the boot. "Be careful." "I will." She gathered the last sack, pretended she did not feel his eyes on her, and told herself she didn't notice how he stood a little more to the left when he spoke, so his scar fell to shadow. She noticed everything. She wished she didn't. Or perhaps she was glad she did. It was hard to know the shape of it yet. When the job was done, Rose wiped her palms on her skirt and stepped back into the street. The day had climbed toward a proper morning. She could hear the telegraph's clatter at the post office, Aggie Delaney's quick hands tapping out other people's secrets, and the blacksmith's anvil ringing like a town bell that only metal understood. The bank's front door shone with brass so polished she could see a small, wavering girl in it. She squared her shoulders, became a woman again, and went in. Henry Atkinson wore black finer than most funerals, and a smile that never reached his eyes. Philip Barnes hovered behind him like a shadow that had learned to take notes. "Miss Thompson," Atkinson said, as if they were old friends he expected to owe him something. "What can I do for the mill today?" She placed the paper on the counter and kept her voice even. "Cashing a money order from my father. Edward Thompson, Leadville." He slid it toward himself with 2 fingers. The sound was not a word. "And how is the mill? The county records show an interesting history on your parcel. Your father's claim is—" "Current," she said, a touch too quick. "We pay what we owe." Atkinson's smile tried again. Of course. The law is a shifting creature in new states. I only mean to help. Rose felt the hair rise at the nape of her neck. Behind the counter, a young clerk with thinning hair, Albert Crow, wouldn't quite meet her eye. She wondered what he'd seen here and what he wished he hadn't. Atkinson counted out the bills with ceremony and slid them across. His cuff glinted. Do give your mother my compliments. I will give her the money, Rose said, and left before she did something impolite like tell him what to do with his compliments. Outside, the air felt cleaner again. She took a long breath, let it out slow, and turned toward the sheriff's office to pay the small fee due on the mill's wagon permit. Sheriff Thaddeus Smith sat on his porch rail with a sprig of sage in his teeth, eyes half-lidded like a man who saw more with less. Deputy Wright polished a star that did not need polishing. Miss Rose, the sheriff said and tipped his hat. How's your mama? Workin', Rose said. As ever. And you, he said, the sage bobbing. Any trouble with Atkinson? She considered the money in her pocket and the way her skin still prickled. No trouble, she said, which was not exactly a lie. He studied her a moment, then nodded as if she'd answered a different question. You tell your mama I'll be stopping by come Thursday. There's a matter of papers I'd like her to see, Rose promised. She started toward the wagon, then paused, drawn by the smell of cinnamon like a ribbon about her wrist. The bakery door stood open. Inside, Benjamin's laugh rose and fell, surprised as if it had run up a hill and found a view. She told herself she'd had enough flour for one day and climbed onto the seat her mother was waiting. As she turned the team for home, a poster on the general store caught a stray beam and flashed, Statehood Celebration, Music, Dancing, Supper by the Creek, August 21. The letters looked like a dare. She told Don, We're not going. Don tossed his head like a horse who knew a lie when he heard one. By the time the meadow took the town back into distance, Rose had nearly convinced herself she meant it. The air turned warm and lazy by afternoon, heavy with the hum of crickets. Rose followed the creek road, taking the long way back after going for a ride and doing some reading. Dawn slowed near a shallow bend where the water caught sunlight like glass. Rose dismounted, meaning only to let him drink. Then she heard humming, a man's voice, low and easy, coming from beyond the reeds. Through the willow branches she saw Benjamin standing knee-deep in the water, sleeves rolled, shirt damp as he washed away the flour. The sound of the creek mingled with his tune. It wasn't bold or improper, just a private moment, unguarded, peaceful. She turned away, cheeks flushed. She meant to leave, but her feet would not move. Instead, she watched the light play on the ripples, felt her breath tremble with something she didn't have a name for. She dared look again at his chest, muscular with a dusting of hairs, his arms moving slowly back and forth. A twig snapped under Don's hoof. Benjamin turned, startled. Their eyes met. Oh, Miss Thompson, he stammered, stepping quickly to the bank. I didn't see, I thought. I'm sorry, she blurted, spinning half around. I was just letting Don drink. I didn't know. He laughed then, warm and good-natured. I should be the one apologizing, he said, wringing water from his sleeve. For the flour this morning and now this. Seems I can't stop looking a fool in front of you. She dared a glance. He looked different out here, open, alive, the sunlight catching his scar like silver thread. I don't think you're foolish, she said quietly. You're kind to say so, he answered. Most folks don't look long enough to think anything of me at all. Besides, to poke fun, I think plenty, and they have no reason to. Rose said before she could stop herself. What about this, as he points to his scar? Most find it ugly. Rose, a gasp. You certainly are not. Well, I would agree. You, he stammers, that you are not ugly. Rose smiles. What am I then? My mother worries about me, with both my sisters being wed already. She turns her head. Benjamin takes his finger and turns her chin. He gazes at her in a way that Rose has never experienced. Benjamin whispers, beautiful. She felt as though every humming bird in the meadow was in her belly. He got closer to her. Would this be it, she thought? Her first kiss. Ben, where in tarnation did you go? Benjamin's dad yells. The hummingbirds stop. I will be right there, father, Ben yells. He blinked, then chuckled softly. You heard about the celebration next week? For statehood? She nods her head affirmatively. Whole town's throwing a dance, lanterns, fiddles, maybe even pie if my father doesn't eat it all first. His grin widened. You should come. Oh, I don't know. Why not? You work too hard to never have a little fun. She smiled, eyes on the rippling water. Maybe. Then it's settled, he said, walking away. I'll save you a dance. As she rode home, the meadows seemed brighter, the sky wider. The thought of the dance burned softly in her mind like lantern light she'd never seen. This concludes Part 1. Please look for Silver Meadows. Part 2. A Blue Calico Dress.